Welcome to True Health Tuesdays, and the truth will set you free. Colon health. This is the last in our series of digestive series. But when you look at it, it's the advice you're going to get out there, because colon cancer is huge, colon problems are huge, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease. This population is sick. Now, I'm talking about water buffaloes. If I was talking about water buffaloes, would you say, damn, we got to find out what they're eating? You know? Because it can't be just a sick population. So please keep equating all of the information that we're giving with there's some environmental cause that's damaging our system. Now, let's say this gal, Janine Calment, I found out about her. Now, she was the oldest recorded living woman. She lived to 122. Now, she smoked cigarettes for about 100 years, okay, only 2 cigarettes a day. She stopped smoking when she was 116 because she felt bad to asking other people to light her cigarette. She loved pound cake, drank wine regularly, ate 2 pounds of milk chocolate every day or every week. And she loved fried foods, loved spicy foods, and she lived to 122. She attributed her long life to an attitude of gratitude, okay, that she was grateful every day. And also she married a very wealthy guy, so she didn't have to work. She took up fencing when she was in her 80s. I mean, so this is our goal. But if we give everybody this type of lifestyle, will they live 120 years? Can we say, hey, this is a good pattern for everyone? No, so you got to look at this a little bit different, because in psycho world, we're all trying to say, okay, everybody has the same environmental circumstances, everybody has the same genetic background, so we should follow the same pattern. Well, that's not true. The nervous system, and this, we're just going to do a quick overview, controls and coordinates every function of the body. So if you're talking the digestive tract, this is 80% of your immune system is controlled by the nervous system. So under physical, chemical, or emotional stress, blood supply to this gut is going to be decreased. Do we have a healthy, relaxed, vibrant, enthusiastic population, or is this a bunch of sick, stressed out people? Okay, I don't know. Let's watch TV for a little bit, You watch a TV commercial and you want to get the Lunesta, but you're afraid about being exposed to tuberculosis. But who doesn't want to run through a field of flowers? You got to love those rheumatoid arthritis commercials where it shows this girl swimming with her dog, and well, why not fix it? We have to understand that physical, chemical, or emotional stress is the leading cause of disease. That's fact. Okay, it's not genetic. Environmental factors are a big contributing factor, but it really is this autonomic nervous system. Now, so we know the stress levels there: physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress. Now let's look at the ecosystem. 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria live in this. Also candida, viruses, funguses. About 15% of the bacteria in there is dangerous. But it's an ecosystem. This is how we're supposed to live. This is how we're designed. And it has a function, it has an environment. Now, if you look at this ecosystem and add anything toxic in there, it's going to damage it. If you create something that destroys the predators, something that destroys any aspect of that ecosystem, pathogenic bacteria are going to grow. Oh, and if you're curious, lettuce doesn't contain E. coli. I just heard this on the news. It's like, good God, stay away from the lettuce, there's E. coli on it. No, it's inappropriate fertilizer sprayed on this stuff from sick animals, and it's getting poisonous stuff on there. I mean, it's just stupid practices. So anything that negatively affects this colon will cause a problem. Anybody got a problem with that? Okay, anything that creates this normal natural ecosystem that's been going on for millennia, that we've designed and adapted to live in this environment. Anything that helps it is good. Does that make sense? Okay, good. I don't want to, I want to make sure I'm not going too fast. This is the kind of stuff that can harm the intestinal tract. Don't do it. Any questions? Oh, Michael, that's the end of the lecture. Okay. Okay, let's go over some more details. Obviously, the nervous system is going to be a contributing factor. If there's physical, chemical, or emotional stress. I just showed you a 122-year-old gal that had a very toxic lifestyle, but she had an attitude of gratitude, acceptance, love, joy. And she married a rich guy and never had to work. But, you know, she really enjoyed herself. I mean, when the Nazis, she was alive when the Nazis were over there. And she said, you know, they stayed in the house. It was uncomfortable, but they didn't take anything. I mean, she had this attitude of just, I never met her, but it would have been, wouldn't you like to hang out with her? Antibiotics, okay? They're subtle. They're in our food supply. They're in our water supply. They're in the meat system if you eat toxic meat. Genetically modified organisms and the pesticides they spray on them, they destroy the gut flora. They destroy the gut flora. So you should be hearing, they destroy 80% of my immune system, weakening my response to the environment. Vaccinations, okay, this can damage the gut. Okay, processed foods, it damages the gut. It's not really food. Now, when you look at colonoscopy, see, with all the colon diseases, there's a big push to look for the colon has the problem. They're not looking at environmental stimulus. If this was the case, they wouldn't be saying, look, you know, after 50, you got to get a colonoscopy every year. Granted that there's a lot of damage that the colonoscopy can do. It can actually kill you. But, you know, you're living in such a toxic environment that if you survive a half a century in this poisonous, psychotic environment, you may end up with damage to the intestinal tract. I'm sorry, that was truth in advertising. I shouldn't really say that. But when you look at this, a couple of years back, I was listening to this PBS show, and it was on the radio, and it said that 9 people had died at UCLA from colonoscopies. And I thought, wait a second, I thought they just shoved a camera up your bum. Okay, and then I got the book, Science for Sale, and they talk about how it's not just the camera, it's what they do to clean out the intestinal tract, that it can damage your system. I encourage you to go to Dr. McDougall, did a great article on it. Mercola does a great article on it. But ultimately, anytime you do a test, okay, and this could be, you know, a biopsy, it could be anything. Anytime you do a test, if it weakens your immune system or weakens your body's response to the environment, that would be bad. If you do a test and it doesn't weaken your body's response to the environment, then it's okay. And you only do a test if it's going to change your approach. Okay, if it's going to actually change your therapy. Does that make sense? So let's say you go to the U.S. Task Force, Preventative Services Task Force, and their recommendations. And I know it's way too small a print, but I just wanted to show you what's on the sheet. I pulled this up a couple hours ago. And what they recommend, and they recommend fecal occult blood test, sigmoidoscopy, and colonoscopies. And they don't recommend it before 50 because the risks are too great, okay? They don't recommend it after 75 because the risks are too great. And colon cancer is a very slow growing problem. Okay, so they're going to go in there and they're going to see something that takes 10 to 20 years to cause damage. So once you're over 76, they figure if you make it to 95, you're going to be okay. Okay, now it's interesting. They say, that, and this is the very bottom fine print. Okay, Jane in the back row, can you read this? No, cover one eye. Okay, so when you look at it, it says, and I'll read the fine print, their recommendations. The U.S. Preventative Service Task Force recommends against the use of aspirin and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Against the use of it. Has drugs for primary prevention of colorectal cancer. So, and you're going to see this over and over again in the research that, you know, it is recommended, that they're recommending non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Okay, let me be clear. Inflammation is not a bad guy. Inflammation is a healing process. Inflammation only occurs if there's tissue damage. If you have tissue damage, tissue is actually broken that releases histamines and causes that inflammatory cascade so you can heal. Anytime you hear inflammation, think tissue damage. And itis means inflammation. If you hear encephalitis, like inflammation of the brain, that means the brain has been damaged. Inflammatory bowel disease, what does that sound like? Not a disease, it sounds like tissue damage. So keep saying over to yourself, well, what caused the tissue to be damaged? Makes sense, right? So inflammation isn't a bad guy, but in psycho world, you're gonna see over and over and over again, well, it's an inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammation's bad, so let's take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. And you'll see this over and over, how they're recommending it all the time. Again, you're killing the alarm bell. Inflammation's that there's a problem. And if you're stopping that response. So this is out of the Journal of the Royal Society. And they say, look, you know, if you take an aspirin, it can maybe help. However, aspirin-treated tumor cell populations is predicted to result in accumulation of more mutations. That's not good. This indicates a potential trade-off between delaying the onset of cancer and increasing its evolutionary potential through chemo prevention. It turns out it's more virulent and harder to treat. So if you treat it with an aspirin, okay, it's not good. Because again, what are you doing? Inflammation's how the body heals. This is downstream thinking. It's just not quite right. If you know that there's been damage to the intestinal tract and you cover it up with a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, yeah, it'll make you feel better and decrease the incidence, but it makes it harder to treat. If you suppress symptoms, you drive the disease further in your body and it gets harder to fix. Okay, do you want to know the cure for the common cold? Okay, you want to know? Okay, you ready for this? This is going to be amazing. You better write this down. The cure for the common cold is the common cold. Honest to God. We're supposed to develop, when you're exposed to a new pathogen, because 50% of your DNA is viral. Okay, you're designed to live here. If you're exposed to a pathogen that's unique, then you develop a cellular and humoral response. You develop swelling. Mucus is going to swell up. Your fever is going to increase. Viruses, funguses, bacteria die at a higher temperature. And you express this beautiful mucus and you express this fever and cough up and goes everywhere. And you just get better. And then if you're exposed to any virus or similar pathogen, you're protected. So this is the response. But in psycho world, we're taught to suppress everything. So now let's screen, okay? How many people do we need to screen? That means because remember, to do this type of colonoscopy, you have to take a substance down your mouth. It's going to evacuate your bowels. However, it's going to be absorbed as well. It can damage the kidney, damage the heart. There's a lot of toxic stuff. But remember, 80% of your immune system's in your gut. 80% of your immune system. Now you have a little reservoir, okay? It's called an appendix. Now it's lymph tissue, but if you ever get exposed to something that's going to evacuate your bowels, that is something totally pathogenic. You're talking dysentery, cholera. You got this appendix that can actually go in there and repopulate if you destroy the normal gut flora. So now if you've had your appendix out, you have a 60% increased risk of colon cancer. So you're already in danger. Why? Because that's only job is to repopulate the intestinal tract with healthy bacteria. So if you've had that out, it's not good. So let's just see. Now this is the number needed to screen. And there's a great article in the Journal of Medical Screening. So how many people do we need to put at risk? Because remember, there's a higher risk if you're under 50. There's a higher risk if you're over 75. So we're talking about this little narrow band here that the risk-benefit ratio is acceptable according to the U.S. Preventative Task Force. So how many people in that age group, okay, is, do we have to screen to save one life? To prevent one death, 1,250 people have to be screened. That means 1,250 people have to go through this process. So it kind of makes you think, well, what are the actual risks? You know, what are the risk-benefit ratio to this? Well, when we look at this, 82 serious complications per 1,000, or 1 per 1,000 with biopsies. I mean, you look at this, it's not a benign procedure. And in fact, the American Cancer Society says there's no prospective randomized controlled trials of screening for colonoscopy reduction in the incidence of reducing colorectal cancer. There's no clinical research to support the effectiveness of virtual colonoscopies. Now, this is something that U.S. Preventative Task Force doesn't recommend. You're talking a massive amount of radiation. It's called a computer tomography, and you get a little bit more radiation than they got at Hiroshima. No, they didn't make out well at Hiroshima. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so when we look at this, what are they looking for? What are they going to find? It turned out between 2000 and 2007, even though they're doing all of these screenings, okay, the list of colorectal cancer increased. So wait a second. Let's go back. We have an ecosystem here. Anything that damages that ecosystem is bad. So if we have to destroy that ecosystem in order to shove a camera up the bum, and it's only viable if we do it to this one age group, how about we take charge of our health right now and decide what we put in our body? Okay, I know. A person in the back yelled, "Blasphemer, blasphemer," and they ran out. Oh, they're driving a prescription van. It says Kaiser on the side. Okay, so what are this? So you figure 14 million screenings per year. That means 140,000 people are going to be injured. And so when you look at the percentage, 56 people have to be needlessly harmed to save one life. Okay, but this is only immediate. We're not talking about what happens to those 56 people by having their gut flora wiped out. And then, just by doing the colonoscopy, blood loss, pulmonary edema, heart attack, strokes, pneumonia, kidney failure, diverticulitis. And wiping out the normal flora can increase inflammatory bowel diseases. And if you have inflammatory bowel disease, what you just heard, because I said inflammation, you heard tissue damage. Okay, so tissue damage causes Crohn's disease, not just some random inflammation. Tissue damage. By disrupting the gut flora, which is what that colonoscopy does, 3,200% increase. Okay, so it's not benign. When we look at this, what can you do? What does the Journal of Preventative Task Force, what do they say? Fecal occult blood test, poop in a bag. If you've had a toxic deficient lifestyle, if you're taking the multiple prescriptions, you go to the fast food, you get the microwavable healthy choice meals. Okay, I know, that just bothers me, okay? It's not healthy. But if you're getting this stuff and you're damaging the intestinal tract, or you've had, glyphosates or vaccines or something that's damaging it, and you're really concerned because you don't have 3 bowel movements a day, you're having 1 every other day, okay, then poop in a bag and then change your lifestyle. It's called a fecal occult blood test. Now, when you hear of inflammatory bowel disease, again, this is what you take in your body. What you take in your body becomes your body. Inflammatory bowel diseases, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, again, these are not diseases that are randomly attacking our population. You're not going to see Crohn's and ulcerative colitis on the standard caribou. Okay, you're going to see it on a toxic deficient person. You're not going to see a person with normal physical, chemical, emotional stress load, somebody that doesn't take drugs, never been vaccinated, eats an organic plant-based lifestyle. Do you think they're going to have Crohn's and ulcerative colitis? It's impossible. It's a species thing. You're not going to see a healthy young caribou eating the tundra developing bowel disorders. It doesn't happen. So if you're living beyond what we're genetically designed to do, you're not going to make it. Now let's look at the intestinal tract. We've got this, the colon that has this muscular tube, and it has this peristaltic wave that pushes food through. And if you have compromised blood supply or nerve supply to this, you're going to have an ouch pouching. That's a diverticulum. If it inflames, it's called diverticulitis. If it's just there, it's called a condition of diverticulosis. All this is, again, it's nothing attacking your colon. It's compromised blood supply or nerve supply. So this is just a toxic deficient lifestyle. When this is damaged, you got to think that it's going to be slow bowel movements. So what kind of things would damage the intestinal wall? What kind of things would compromise the blood supply or nerve supply? That's right, sympathetic dominance. How did you know that? Oh my God. Okay, next time raise your hand. Don't just speak out like that. That was really rude. Okay, so when you look at this, you're right. So you under that stress state, and that's physical, chemical, or emotional stress, you got blood supply compromised to it. And of course, let's look at the medical approach. If you have diverticulitis, it hurts. Why? It's supposed to. Okay, it's not working right. Pain is a signal that there's a problem. So if you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, oh, what did we just read? What does that do to colon cancer? If there's any type of abnormal cell down there, it makes it harder and more difficult to treat. But that's what's prescribed. And then remember, you got 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria in there. So what's the medical approach for diverticulitis? Take an antibiotic. That's a bummer, because that's going to destroy a good hunk of our natural flora down there. And don't worry, if it's bad, we cut out the offending part. Honestly, every time I say this stuff and think about a different species, it sounds so weird. Humans are so naturally sick that you think, well, of course, it's a sick species. But you wouldn't do this to a group of dogs or cats or anything. So let's look at how simple it is to fix. This is a colonoscopy of diverticulum. And you can see the outpouchings in there. And it turns out the Journal of Nutrition, dietary fiber, especially the stuff that you can't digest, insoluble, may reduce your risk of diverticulitis and inflammation and polyps. Why? Because you've got a muscular tube. You've got outpouchings, diverticulum, inpouchings called polyps. And if you work that tube, you work that tissue, you get that thing working correctly, you have healthier tissue. That makes sense. They used to tell people, for goodness sake, don't eat nuts or seeds or popcorn because it gets stuck in those outpouching. Okay, you know what they used to tell for ulcers, stomach ulcers? Drink milk, because see how it coats this glass? It's going to coat your stomach. Okay? I know. How many people remember commercials like that? I mean, I know. It was like, wow, it has no basis in science. And in fact, it's really stupid to put in your mouth, but it really plays well on the commercial. So this thing, there's no studies on it or anything. For 40 years, they're saying, for goodness sake, don't eat this stuff. Then the Journal of the American Medical Association did it, and they found out that people that actually ate this stuff that's hard to digest, it worked then at colon, and they had less incidence of the diverticulum formation. I mean, just brilliant. Appendix. If you've had your appendix removed, because what's the function of the appendix? If you have a problem with the gut flora, which is what the majority of Americans have, because we're taking in a lot of things that's damaging our gut flora, that's creating yeast, fungus, candida, overgrowth, it's deadly. We have a 17-fold increase. It's not a doubling. Okay, I was told that it was a 60% increase, but it's 17-fold. This is the latest article I could find. Increased risk of colon cancer if you've had your appendix removed. Now, in a lot of areas, guess how they treat appendicitis without removing it? They treat it with antibiotics. I know, isn't that interesting? So it turns out that if you have pathogenic bacteria, like let's say you were scared of the E. coli spraying on spinach, and so now you move over to lettuce. Yeah, okay, that's the latest E. coli scare. Okay, when you're gonna spray fertilizer on plants, okay, you're supposed to let it ruminate and break down so it's not toxic and poisonous, but they don't do that anymore because that takes too much time. So they're just spraying raw, poop on plants, and that's why we're having this psychosis. But if you've had the appendix ripped out, you have a 17-fold increased risk of colon cancer. Why? Because what's the job of this appendix? It's to replace the normal gut flora. So if you look at that intestinal tract, and I'm going to say ecosystem again, I know I've said it about 50 times, but you have an ecosystem of that intestinal tract, and anything you do that harms it harms the appendix. So you have to look at this as an intelligent area. Antibiotics kill the normal flora, weakens the body's immune system. Antibiotics can actually poke holes in the intestinal tract. They don't really. What they do is they decrease they change the environment, and then yeast can poke holes in the intestinal tract. But it's interesting that this is an antibiotic, and it causes an increase in heart attacks. Antibiotics increases heart attacks. So now, if this is a journal article saying this, that it can cause a leaky gut and can damage the heart, how does it do that? Where's 80% of the immune system? Where is that? Good. Do you like the hint? I was working with you, Doc. Yeah. So anything that damages the gut. And you get people taking antibiotics for ear infections. We get little kids taking that. And even though 97% of ear infections aren't infections, they're ear effusions, they're damaging the children's gut. Okay, how many people are taking antibiotics for bronchitis? Again, that's not recommended. Okay, that damages the gut, that weakens the immune system. Can you imagine having inflamed areas in the lungs that's designed to protect you, but then you take a drug to decrease the bacteria and that wipes out your immune system? This is crazy. So this is not a good method to raise animals. I know you're thinking, cool, the chicken's got a lot of buddies. But no, it's a crowded, toxic, dangerous environment, and you make poisonous meat. Okay, this was interesting. Glyphosates. Now this is in the food for animals. It's in our food supply now. It's in all non-organic bread. It's rampant. And they did a study because Monsanto said, look, it's safe. It only works on bacteria. I know what you're thinking now. Wait a second, don't we have 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria in our gut? Isn't that vital to our immune system? Yeah. So they fed rats this stuff for 90 days and the rats were fine. Okay, I know, they didn't want to work on attorneys or doctors. Okay, they just worked. I felt bad for the rats too. I did. But they developed tumors after a couple of years. Okay, so we know that it is toxic. So they printed this up and published it up. Now, if you're printing something that's against one of the most powerful corporations in the world that actually funds a lot of our government, you're going to have it retracted. Why? Because they know people, okay? You're not going to print this. In fact, you're going to hire my buddy, and this is a guy, a former Monsanto employee. He was presented as the editor for biotechnology, and he says, hey, I don't like this one. I don't know if he was Italian, but it works, doesn't it? Okay. Yeah, so, we don't want that information there. Okay, but then you get real doctors, okay, Dr. Huber, talking about glyphosates, because again, our gut is designed for millennia to survive on this planet. We just had one of our patients, her daughter, I mean, she looked like she was like 12, but she was probably like 15. She just went from Mother's Market and she had a nut. And she had to rush to the emergency room because they had to give her a shot because she is highly allergic to nuts. Take me out to the ball game, buy me some peanuts. Yeah, we now have peanut-free days at the ballpark because the population is so hypersensitive, and we have such a sick population that food is poisonous now. That schools have EpiPens. I mean, this should be like a wake-up call that whatever we're doing to our body is making food poisonous, and that's not good. This first fella here, Future historians may well look back on our time and not write about how many pounds of pesticides we did or didn't apply, but by how willing we are to sacrifice our children and future generations with this massive genetic engineering experiment based on flawed science and flawed promises. If you look up Robin Byron, okay, she does a really good TED Talk on how food's poisonous. I mean, this kid, how can you be allergic to food? Can you imagine a caribou, a deer, a beaver eating their natural habitat and getting sick, so sick that they can die? And that's because a lot of the vaccines are suspended in peanut oil, nut oil, processed foods. It's getting into our bloodstream and the body is recognizing these allergens or pathogens, and it's building an immune system response. So when you eat it and you have a leaky gut, weakened immune system, whatever, your immune system goes crazy. It's mind-boggling. I mean, this stuff is happening here now. Turns out that the glyphosate is not only affecting our generation, it's affecting the next generation, even if they're not eating it. Okay, so this isn't something like, gee, I wish I should start getting organic. Okay, this is like, my God, it's going to affect your unborn children. Okay, this is a big deal. Now, we have 69 doses of 16 different vaccines. There's such an idea that this is not an issue. Okay, why? Because vaccines are forced on our population. Forced medical procedures without informed consent. That's not right. I wouldn't force vitamin C on the public because it's just not right. That doesn't make any sense at the end.
By law.
Kids
go to school.
Your kids can go to school. And in fact, there is a way that you can get past the law because there's still medical exemptions. What you have to do in order to get by this, you have to go in and get a DNA test that takes about $100. And then you're looking for a sensitivity test. We got the paperwork up here. Most everyone's going to have the MTHFR gene, which means that your body is going to negatively respond to the poisons inside, particularly the aluminum adjuvants and the other adjuvants. It's just not good for you. So then there's some thinking MDs still left, not just in the front and back row. There's a lot. And they're saying, look, man, you can't do one procedure on everybody and expect it to be safe. Yeah, we'll get you hooked up with it. But now the procedure, so you get this, and then you go to a medical doctor and say, look, my child's at risk of getting more harm than any benefit from these vaccines, and then they give you an exemption. Okay, and it just makes sense because, I mean, this stuff isn't studied in science. There's no double-blind placebo-controlled trial. And when you see the placebos, they're just checking one vaccine to another vaccine. I know, if anybody in here was confused and you thought placebo was an inert substance that doesn't have an effect in the body and that's what we're comparing to, no, these are all tested utilizing active placebos and a vaccine with a known effect. Right. Okay, there's about 40 people in here. How about we shoot everybody up with one vaccine? Are we going to have the same results? No. How about we shoot everybody up in here with 69 doses of 16 vaccines and see what the heck happens? Don't worry, I'm going to force it on you. Okay, so that's a normal bowel pattern, and that giant hole that looks like a shotgun was just shot in her. That's a gal that went through 9 years, well, her mom went through 9 years of court, and this is what vaccines do to the gut. They destroy the gut. This is, again, abnormal gut pattern on the left, normal gut pattern on the right, again, vaccine damaged. So we're looking at this over and over and over again. Measles MMR. Now this is only one of the 16 different shots that are given to the kids, but it's ileocolonic lymph nodular hyperplasia. A new, what is that? Inflammatory, what was it? Inflammatory what? Inflammatory bowel disease. So you hear inflammation, tissue damage, exactly. So does that mean that this is damaging the tissue? No longer do I want to hear Doc, I got to do something about this inflammation here. No, the inflammation is there to heal you. Okay, it's the tissue damage, because doesn't that change the conversation? Doc, I got to do something about this tissue damage here. Well, yeah, let's restore the blood supply, nerve supply, get rid of the physical, chemical, emotional stress. We're going to get your gut healed. We're going to get you to sleep right, poop right, and think right, and your body will heal. That's how doctors speak. They don't say, gee, take this non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, it'll just kill that inflammation right off the bat. Of course, it's going to damage your brain and everything else, but you'll be feeling better. So there's an adjuvant, okay, Asia, which damages the intestinal tract. So if you've been in the Gulf War, in the military, or go into our school system, and it's because in this culture you can't badmouth the vaccines, you can only badmouth the adjuvants. All medications can damage the intestinal tract. All medications can damage it. Why? Because anything you put in here has to go through the stomach and intestinal tract. So this is 80% of your immune system. Study after study after study after study, every medication. So if you are taking a drug, find out why. Because sick people need drugs. Sick people don't get better by taking drugs. Okay, sick people need them. Statins, cholesterol drugs. Now, just brilliant research this weekend at this last seminar. Cholesterol drugs massively increase Alzheimer's. Massive. And this just shows that it destroys the gut flora. So what do you do? What do you do? How do we get back to building our normal gut flora? How do we get back to how we're designed? Okay, what would you do to that sick caribou? You'd say, dude, get out there, start eating some tundra. So what do? You got to get the healthy nerve supply. If you're taking drugs, find why you're taking them. Okay, have you ever heard of anyone afraid to talk to their doctor because you stopped taking your medication and you didn't want to tell them? Okay, right now, I wish I could turn a camera back here. I'm seeing about 10 people. Oh yeah, man, I ain't gonna tell that guy. He'd be pissed at me. Your doctors work for you. If they don't have the same mindset or belief system, they need to be fired. When they start losing enough people and the system stops getting paid into, it will change. When we stop accepting and acquiescing to, yeah, here's my baby. Go ahead, shoot him. I want him to go to school. Okay? This is insane. We have to take our rights back. We have to take our bodies back. Healthy saturated fats, you'll see in psychotic articles that they're dangerous and damaging. And then you'll see mountains of research saying they're wonderful. Where do you go in a culture like this? What did your great-grandparents eat? Okay, what did your great-grandparents eat? Eat that same thing. Okay, we don't need to deal with the crap that we're hearing now. Toxic, gluten-free for how long? Life. Why? Because it's poisonous. Organic, healthy glutens, fantastic. Commercial dairy, free for life. Why? Because it's poisonous. And when you're healing your gut, it takes about 30 to 60 days to heal it. But you need fermented veggies, you need juiced and blended fruits, juice vegetables. You just start cleaning out the arteries, you're reducing your stress level. And then we got this. Recent studies demonstrated that probiotic bacteria have beneficial effects in these diseases, improving the intestinal barrier function. Inflammatory bowel diseases. So no longer do you look at inflammatory bowel diseases as some creature attacking your intestinal tract. Okay? This is poisons that you've put in your body that have damaged the intestinal tract, whether they're injected or ingested. This is a dangerous situation for our species. Doesn't this bowl look good? Not just if you've been fasting since Monday night, this looks really good to normal people. Okay, but when you look at it, the antioxidants, antimicrobials, this has so many nutrients in there, it's so vital. And all it is, your grandma and grandparents would recognize this. They would recognize dark chocolate, blueberries, pecans. They would recognize this stuff. It's just food. And what about cruciferous vegetables? Fantastically good for you. Saute them, cook them if you have a systemic inflammatory response, because the alkaloids in there can actually lower the thyroid function. And look at this, how many people are diagnosed with a low functioning thyroid? If you have inflammation, and this is bowel inflammation, head inflammation, meningeal inflammation, skin inflammation, all of these inflammatory diseases. Have you heard of encephalitis, okay? Dermatitis, pulmonitis, colonitis. All of these inflammatory bowel diseases, keep hearing, not inflammation, tissue damage to the lung, tissue damage to the brain, tissue damage here. So all of that tissue damage is going to create an inflammatory response, triggering the adrenal glands, and then the thyroid's going to appear low. Nobody has a low functioning thyroid unless they're severely nutrition deficient or if they've been exposed to radiation. Can you imagine 2018 living in California, Oregon, and Washington with Fukushima spewing out stuff? What a toxic, dangerous time that was. Well, anyway, so you're supplementing with iodine, you're gonna be okay, don't worry. Okay, people are bad-mouthing grains, but we've had grains for 10,000 or actually 15, 20,000 years, but they have to be healthy grains. You gotta have your gut healed, okay, but sprouted, rich, delicious, ancient grains. It's fantastic. So when we put this up, and we put this up at the end of every talk, you can see we're a species designed to thrive on this planet. God knows there's 7 billion of us here. So we have made it. We're from the Arctic to the desert. Okay, but we've done this by adapting to our environment. We are having a great challenge to adapt to this environment of a toxic, poisonous, deficient lifestyle. And then we have a psychotic world of all our immune system responses to adapt to this poisoning and tissue damage. The therapies are killing us faster. It's crazy. It's time to take this back. You need a healthy nerve supply. You gotta walk every day. What did the 122-year-old gal do? Walked every day. Okay, she stopped smoking when she had trouble lighting her cigarette. Okay, proper nutrition. This means if man makes it, don't eat it. Okay? Really, only stuff that your grandparents would eat. It's too expensive to buy organic, get frozen organic. Okay, you can stock up. Sufficient rest. How many people are sleeping with the TV on? You can't do it anymore. Okay, you gotta be a master sleeper. This is a skill. Yeah, man, my head hits a pillow, I'm out like a light. Okay, would anyone like to develop that skill? Yeah, we got like 4 videos on it. And then prayer and meditation. What was the one secret? Okay, Caliente did. What's the one thing she did that I could recommend? I can't recommend bacon and eggs and bread and butter and smoking every day. I can't recommend that stuff because it's not, you can have a negative effect. But the one thing she did, she had a beautiful attitude of gratitude, an attitude of love. And what did this do to her nervous system? Amazing. That's what the prayer and meditation does. Does that make sense? You are designed to thrive on this planet, okay? Definitely. If your grandma wouldn't do it, actually great grandma, then you shouldn't do it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
For those of us unfortunate to have our appendix out, other than probiotics, what's a good everyday thing that we must do?
Okay, now I got to repeat every question, and that was very clear and concise. For those of us that had the appendix taken out, what can we do? Not much. Okay, no! You just got to be really, really diligent, okay, to realize that you had damage to the appendix. Oh, it's kind of cool. There was a rash of appendicitis when they first started to chlorinate water. I know, isn't that interesting? Okay, so know that you have, to have your appendix burst or get taken out, you had exposure to something that destroyed your normal gut flora because it damaged the gut flora inside of that appendix. So you're going to have to eat healthy bacteria-containing food with every meal, which is going to be ideal. And then you're going to eat a plant-based diet, and you're going to be healthy for forever. Okay, and what other kind of things can you do? Get your nervous system checked, exercise regularly, and proper nutrition, but you're just going to add more fermented foods. If you eat too many fermented foods, is that bad? If pre-digested, it's good for you, Sufficient rest and prayer and meditation. You follow the rules, you're styling. Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe in eating for the blood type?
Do I believe in eating for the blood type? Not metabolic typing, absolutely. The eat right for your type, there's some variations. He took some stretches with some of the data. Okay, but eating right for your type makes a lot of sense. And this is if you're consuming something and you see how you feel. If you can metabolize it and you feel better, cool, that's appropriate for you. If you have Northern European heritage, dairy is probably, you're going to be able to digest and process it if it's raw, healthy, organic. If you're from south of the Mediterranean, you might not have that lactose. You might not be able to process it. Okay, so look at how your body metabolizes nutrients. And also, what we'll tell with our patients who've had like leaky bowel disorders and gut, I'm talking the standard human nowadays. I'll ask them about their cravings, because you'll get kids that are craving chocolate. Okay, they're mineral deficient. They're craving certain things, okay? And it's all their body response to certain energy. Like people that are craving sugar, they actually need more fat, they need more energy. So the metabolic typing I like a lot better. Yes, ma'am.
Is a keto diet good for somebody who's had their gallbladder removed?
Is a keto diet good for somebody that's had their gallbladder removed? Yeah, it's good. And with all ketogenic diets, you're increasing your fats. Where people get messed up is they're going to have bacon and butter every day. Okay, you got to have healthy fats like coconut oil, avocado, fantastically good for you. But try and do a ketogenic diet about 3 weeks out of the month, because you need to go in there and have your metabolism reset. But if you've had your gallbladder taken out, you got to increase your fats, because the gallbladder's function is to store and concentrate bile, and when fat hits that duodenum, it contracts and sheds fluid in there, or the bile in there, to emulsify the fats. So this way you're always having bile constantly dripping there, which can cause an ulcer, but it's also going to be fat deficient because you can't break down the fats. So you got to increase the fats. But the reason the gallbladder was taken out in the first place is because of chronic stress. Because under physical, chemical, or emotional stress, your stress hormones are going to be released, and that gets in the blood. The blood goes to the spleen hands off to the liver fades back, produces a bunch of bile, then throws that bile over to the gallbladder. The gallbladder stores and concentrates that bile. Do you like the sports analogy? Okay. And so the gallbladder stored and concentrate this stuff, and some of those hormones can actually coalesce and form the gallstones or sludge, and that's where the symptoms occur. So look at the stress level too. Yes, sir.
I'm sure most of us realize we should cut our sugar back, but how really is bad on aspartame?
Okay, I'm sorry, I got to repeat that so you'll understand why people are laughing. Okay, sugar's supposed to be bad, and we're supposed to cut back on it, but really how bad is aspartame? Aspartame breaks down into formaldehyde. It breaks down into very, very toxic substances only if I think it's over 86 degrees. So if you're warmer than 86 degrees, it will kill you. Okay, it's devastating. And then the chlorinated sugar is actually worse. You're going to talk kidney damage, cancers, everything. It's just insane. If you want sugar, they have it in these prepackaged forms. They're called berries. Okay, they're amazing. Okay, and if you get them organic, you can actually eat it. Like if you really want to party like a rock star, okay, you slice up a little bit of banana, okay, you put a little Manuka honey on it, maybe some, apricot kernels, so you got some anti-cancer fighting in there, and that's a good dessert. Raw chocolate is a good alternative. Pure sugarcane juice. There's so many sweets out there that you can use aside from the refined carbohydrates. The sugarcane was one of the first cultivated crops, but it was real cane. You could suck on it, tons of minerals. So the toxic substances are completely poisonous. Yeah, they shouldn't even be in the food supply. Oh, you know what's wild? We did an experiment. I don't know, Michael, do you remember the apple pie that somebody brought to one of our parties? Okay, It was made with aspartame. It was like a Thanksgiving, and I wouldn't let anyone eat it. But we put it outside for, I think it was a month and a half. No bugs landed on it, nothing. And I remember Danny, I think he was like 10, he stuck his thumb in it and pulled it out, and it smelled just like apples. It smelled like fresh as a daisy. No ants, no bugs, nothing. So, yeah, but I thought it was a weird experiment. Okay, and next week we're going to talk about hormones. In fact, we're going to talk about hormones the entire month. Now, this month, as we're finishing up at the Extreme Health Academy, we've got a number of challenges, and you can go back and do them, but we've got a great 14-day challenge on the digestive tract. It's really, really cool. I'd recommend it. Live like your grandparents. Thank you very much.